Habargani. Greetings, divine, all blessed, peace and love, joy and prosperity. Eshu alegwana kosi weri awo onlo uto ni iwo ara afanbo osi obatala mi ita ibo ni ibo. Onelio Abane Shu. Eshu is a respected elder who flaws, confronts, and uncovers fools. That one versed in mysteries uses truth to own you, causes scatter to feed poverty. Obatala shakes rascals to have sacrifice. The owner of warnings is the one who is Eshu. Aboru, Aboye, Aboshishe, Ashe. May our Ebo reach our room. May our Ebo be accepted. May our Ebo allow what we desire to come to pass. And so we say Ashe, Asheo, and Ashe. You are now sitting again live with the Divine Prince, and always in archive at your leisure and convenience with this Pan-African spiritualist, practitioner, advisor, Alagun Oloye Hoodoo Obea Bokua, sharing with you in all things spiritual, mystical, metaphysical, cosmic, evolutionary, revolutionary, universal, healing, and holistic from a Pan-African Hoodoo world spiritualist perspective. Understanding that all is truly and indeed a blessing if you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test and one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. This is my constant prayer, my mantra, affirmation, reverberation, reiteration, and my ever living reality. It is crucial to the very foundation of my understanding, my teaching, my walk, my works along this divine, all blessed life path and journey. It is how I, the Divine Prince, makes out of all that we are challenged with here in our daily existence on Mother, Father, Earth. And it is my personal place of power and understanding, the place from where I begin, the place from where I realize and crystallize all my endeavors, understanding that I and I alone create and create my divine destiny, and I alone create and co-create my divine, all blessed reality. And so it is. Ashe, Asheo, and Ashe. I most certainly do welcome and greet each and every one of you. I acknowledge and honor the God and Goddess who gather here in this sacred space. I am humbled and honored that you take the time out of the middle of your day at high noon U.S. Central Standard Time to be present here for the Power Lunch Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes here on YouTube Live. I am grateful for your questions, comments, and requests. Please do remember to type your questions in all capital letters so that I may see them. And only type comments in capital letters that I absolutely need to respond to for the group. Please do acknowledge and honor and give respect to Queen Amina, our moderator. I'm certainly grateful and humbled for your participation and your consistency in being present here with us in this shared sacred space. I also want to thank Erica for your patience. And please, 3 o'clock, I'll be ready for you at 3 o'clock. All is truly and indeed a blessing. We always have so much that we like to talk about and share and discuss in this space, but we're also moved by spirit. For indeed, if you cannot operate in the realm of spirit, you cannot operate in the realm of magic. You cannot operate in the realm of voodoo, for it is not rigid. It is indeed fluidity, flexibility, balance, harmony, and finding your place in the universe. For indeed, we all are gods. We all are goddess. We all are creators and co-creators with this fascinating, powerful universe in which we all inhabit. And we have the ability and the choice to choose magic over oppression, to choose voodoo over slavery, to choose freedom and liberation over the continued excessive traditionalism of systems and practices and teachings that have not worked for us, no longer work for us, and only seek to continue to keep us in a subservient, consumer-based position. And speaking of consumer-based, I appreciate the fact that we have a global audience, that people are sharing and participating in this space globally. I also appreciate the fact that people are responsive to what is said and shared in this space. And I know some of you have noticed that the bloody Ifa profiles on Instagram have changed just a little bit in the last 2 or 3 days. And you are beginning to see humans, but you're still not seeing faces. You're still not matching identities. You're still not seeing consistency of identity. So we must remain vigilant, and not only claiming self-identity, but also how we interact with one another in truth. We must be able to stand in our truth. Some of you are still hiding the voodoo. Some of you still are closeted about the hoodoo. Some of you still going to church on Sunday and claiming you're a master magician on Wednesday. We must be true and consistent and sit in our truth, stand in our truth, speak in our truth, operate in our truth, demonstrate our truth. All is truly and indeed a blessing. And again, I am open always to your questions, comments, and requests. I want this to be an active participation space. I don't want this to be a daily lecture. I don't want this to be a place where people come and be entertained by me for any amount of time. But I would like to share your questions, your comments, your requests. We all know that many have questions about various aspects of not only voodoo and initiation, but ATR as a I don't want to say an industry, but as a discipline, because it does include so much more than just voodoo, so much more than just Ifa. If we truly indeed understand the dynamics of what culture and ethnicity is and how those things come together by way of the Middle Passage, and have now found themselves in the New World. And I realize we have a global audience, but many of us are living and existing here in America and South America and in the so-called New World, post-Middle Passage, suffering the effects of post-traumatic slave disorder, suffering the effects of PTSD, suffering the effects of white supremacy, suffering the effects of having to fear, being killed by the police, having to fear whether our children are going to make it home at the end of the day. And so the desire and the need for much of what we desired and needed voodoo for during the time of the Boakame and during the time of the Haitian Revolution still exist, or indeed exist in a very different form today. And so we seek self-freedom, self-liberation, self-identity through this path that we call voodoo. And when I say voodoo, it's a very general term, for indeed, there are various families within this tradition. And we can look to Nigeria, we can look to Togo, we can look to Benin, we can look to Ghana, we can look to Cameroon and Congo and many other regions of the West African portion of the continent, where many of our ancestors were forcibly removed and carried off into enslavement for footprint of our lineage into these traditions. And it is indeed important. I don't want to continue to have an ongoing discussion about DNA and the pros and cons of DNA. I think many of you understand my position on DNA and why I find it to be a valuable tool in identifying and distinguishing those families, those ethnic groups, those tribes, if you will, that many of us represent here in the States. And know that it's not singular. Know that we are not just one thing. You'd be hard pressed to find anyone who's just one thing. So in the acknowledgement of ancestors, I like the idea that we acknowledge ancestors today in 2019. I like the idea that the acknowledgement of ancestors is commonplace today in 2019. I like the idea that it's even made its way into social media and pop cultural reference. But indeed, we have to identify who those ancestors are. We need to identify who those people are, who are standing up, who are speaking through us, who are working with us. for our best interests, for our better good. And many today are seeking support, are feeling isolated, are feeling unsupported in your beliefs, in your lifestyle, in your way of viewing things, in your way of doing things. And I believe, teach, and understand that isolation indeed is an illusion. It is an illusion. There's always an out. There's always someone to connect to. There's always someone else who's resonating on that vibration, who feels what you feel, who's had that experience. We just need to do the work to seek those people out. And today, that is much easier to do by way of the internet. Now the downside of that is you can have one depressive person, one negative person, one cynical person, one non-believing person, one unstudied person, and that person in the space that is virtual, in social media, can then, like honey, draw other similar spirits unto themselves. And sometimes we group ourselves in people who think just like us, look just like us, believe just like us, have opinions that match ours, are similar to ours, or have no opinion at all. And we see that a lot in social media. You have your friends that like everything you post. And then you have your friends who like, but then have an opinion about what you post, have a comment about what you post. And then you have those who don't like anything and don't have opinion about anything. And then there's those who don't like anything and have an opinion about everything and don't like any of it. So you have to find your way. You have to be self-sufficient. You have to be independent and autonomous. But without a foundation, without a map, without a blueprint, many today are wandering in this forest of information and hyper stimulation, seeking connection to something that they can root themselves into, that they can build a foundation upon. And as I've said in many shows, voodoo was my salvation. Many of you know my story. Many of you know the tragedy of my upbringing. Many of you know the tragedy of my childhood. Voodoo was my salvation. I otherwise would have been, many people say I should have been, a statistic of many categories. And so voodoo was my salvation. And so I gift unto the world, I gift unto you that which has been given unto me. You can't give what you don't have. You can't share what you can't demonstrate. You can't teach what you don't truly own, what you don't truly represent in here and in here. And that forth comes out in your demonstration. We can all read from a script. We can all read from a text. We can all read from a book. We can all copy and paste and mimic what has been said before and what the next guy has said and what the next woman has reiterated. We can all share and like and reshare, someone else's original idea, someone else's original post. But we are now moving into a dispensation of authenticity from the highest echelons down, from our presidential office down. We're going to see a move, and that move has already begun for people standing up in their authenticity, rightly or wrongly, rightly or wrongly. We had an actor, I can't recall his name, who admitted here lately in the news that he went searching for a black man after his friend, I believe another actress, said that she had been raped, had been victimized, and he went looking with a weapon for any black man to sort of take revenge and retribution on. And of course, there has been a backlash in the media, as there's always a backlash in the media for almost any kind of pronunciation of a truth, rightly or wrongly. But the idea that people are seeking greater depths of authenticity is very real. It's very real. So we must be real first in our commitments to who we are, in our commitments to this journey that we say we walk in, that we project in social media, in imagery that we are part of. But look for the details. Pay attention to the details. We often miss the details, not only around us, but often in ourselves. We're in a rush, we're in a hurry, we're moving quickly, we got a lot on our plate, we got a lot to do, we got a lot of needs that we feel need to be fulfilled and need to be filled post haste, in a very quick matter of time. And in an environment like that, in a vortex like that, you begin to disconnect from the various dimensional realities that all of us are interconnected with. What separates the psychic, the spiritualist, the witch, the voodoo practitioner, the E5 practitioner from the average waking human is our ability to interact interdimensionally in other dimensional spaces, which is something that's not taught, that's not trained, that's not educated at any level in this culture, in this society. So we often seek alternative religions, alternative studies, alternative practices for means of stimulating that activity. Often I get the question of how do I enhance my psychic ability? How do I open my third eye? How do I increase my ability to be intuitive? Um, and it's no easier than learning to play an instrument, learning to play the tenor sax, learning to play the piano, learning drum rhythms and dance patterns, um, learning the difference between 4/4 and 3/8 notes and different sequences. It just requires an honest desire to want to consume and take in that information. And particularly when you couple studying, reading, researching, and a desire for internalizing that information with quartz crystal, you get profound results because not only are you taking that in, through your regular senses when you are studying, reading, absorbing something, but you are also taking it in at a higher frequency when you utilize quartz during that process. Excuse me. I don't want to neglect my chat. I welcome each and every one of you personally, individually, and collectively. I certainly appreciate your being present here in this sacred space, this squared circle of gods and goddesses. I welcome your questions, your comments. Please do type them in capital letters so that I may see them and be able to distinguish them from the other comments and questions in the chat. Um, if they're lowercase, I'm going to assume you're not talking to me and that it's not a relevant question that I need to respond to. Bonsoir, divine all blessed. I'm so glad that you are here and present with us in this sacred space, my brother. I've been watching, I've been looking, I've been studying, I've been paying attention. um, just based on your communication. So I welcome you to be here. Thank you so much for showing up. I appreciate you, Prince, for being with us in the space. I welcome all of you, and please type your questions in capital letters so that I can see them. Thank you so much, Honey Queen Bonita. Thank you so much for being present with us here today. I came into the group today, and I believe, yeah, there's I don't know, a $3 donation in the check from you. I don't know if that was inadvertent or something, but I'm glad to see that you're also here with us today, and I appreciate that. I welcome your questions. Please do type your questions and the comments that I need to respond to in capital letters. I'll be more than happy to address them. Santeria Trinity Santo, welcome. I do see and appreciate your question. Now I'm going to preface it because I got to first respond to your name. Now, a name like Santeria Trinity Santo would suggest that you have some inner workings of how Santeria works. So if this is a real question, then you know I can't answer this question without doing a divination. I can't determine how successful you're going to be in the movie industry or in your career. Uh, in the space of a chat where we have at least 30 people right now directing energy at me and at the group. It's like an orchestra is playing and you're asking me to separate your whisper in the midst of that sound. So I need you to send me a direct email to DivinePrince at houseofthedivineprince.com. You can also visit my website at www.houseofthedivineprince.com. I'll be more than happy to assist you personally, professionally, directly, powerfully with that question. But I certainly do appreciate you being here. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Peace and love to everyone. Greetings to everyone. If I didn't call out your name, please don't feel neglected. Um, Remember, my chat keeps scrolling up, and I keep having to go back up to see if I'm missing people or questions. Dark Girl Tantra, thank you. Divine Self Healing, welcome. Uncle Glenn, welcome. Keisha Smith, Seven the Gentleman, I welcome all of you. Please do bring your questions, bring your comments that are relevant to the group. Please do type them in capital letters. I'll be more than happy to address them. What is the best finger for certain precious stone rings? Now, precious stone rings are real popular and real common. One, because they absolutely do carry the healing vibration of the bigger stones, but they're also popular because as far as crystal mineral gems go, they are small in size. They don't require, massive materials to create and make. Thus, that keeps them economically on the lower end. So you can buy a rose quartz ring, a hematite ring, a gemstone ring, for $5, $10. In some cases, even cheaper than that. Um, but they do tend to be thin. You do have to be careful. They will crack, they will break. I don't necessarily think that's a negative. I call that an empathic uh, symptom of these stones. Because they are stones and they are often tiger eye. Um, this is a ruby, but anneolite. This is a form of ruby mixed with another mineral, and this is called anneolite. This is called sunstone. You'll find rings in sunstone. You'll find rings in hematite often. Um, you'll find them, of course, in rose quartz. Rose quartz is a very abundant stone, and you might even find them in Dalmatian. So they carry the vibration of the stones. So be sure you have great mineral books, crystal books that not only tell you about the spiritual value of the stone, but sometimes you need to know the hardness scale of the stone, the chemical makeup of the stone, what other gems and or inclusions and minerals might be present in your stone and how that might work. And then that would affect what finger I would tell you to wear it on. Now, at the most basic level, your pinky is going to represent the earth. That's your earth finger. Water, that's your water finger. Your ring finger represents the water element. Your middle finger represents fire. Your pointer finger represents air. And then your thumb represents the mind or the ether, if you will, the spirit realms. So that too is going to determine where and how you place not only your gem, mineral, stone jewelry, but even your silver and your goal. Just based on that little bit of information that I gave you in the chat just now, you have a better understanding of why my jury is placed where it is and what forces, what powers I'm seeking to draw, project, or elevate. It also determines what fingers I wear my stones on and how I wear my stones. And I don't always wear them in the same order, same position, same finger every day, because we aren't working in the same power every day. We aren't working in the same energy every day. We often, as humans, and particularly in the West, look to reduce things down to the absolute thing. What's the one book I can read that's going to give me everything that I need? What's the one teacher I need to, connect myself with, excuse me, to give me everything that I need? And the reality is that everything in creation has something to offer. Everything, both the positive experience and the negative experience, has something to offer. So there's a cycle, there's a season. And even in terms of how we operate in Voodoo, Ifa, Lakomi, Santeria, Candable, Palo, Sanse, Maria Leonza, there is a ritual cycle. It's a 4-day ritual cycle, and Ifa is referred to as Ose Ifa. And each day, there's a set of powers that govern the day. Those who are naturally born into the systems understand that. Those who've been initiated into these systems understand that. And those who've done enough of their homework and they study and they research understand what I'm talking about. To some of you, I realize this is new information. So it doesn't matter who's on your head. It doesn't matter who you're crowned. It doesn't matter what spirit you think you're walking in. Each day, like the weather, there's a change. There's an adjustment. We can't all prepare for sunny days, because I don't care where you live in the world, every day is not going to be a sunny day. You've got to prepare for the rain. You've got to prepare for the storms. You've got to prepare for the seasonal change, lest you live on the equator. But another way of looking at that is, even if you live on the equator, there's still going to be a shifting in wind. And remember now, as it is above, so shall it be below. As it is above, so shall it be below. It's the six-pointed star. So we can look at nature and learn scripture. We can look at nature and learn voodoo. We can look at we can look at nature and learn Ifa. We can look at nature and learn any magical system if it's indeed an authentic organic system. And an authentic organic system is going to resonate with nature. It's going to be in balance with nature, and therefore create balance within you, within your environment, and within yourself. Vortexes. Daniel Neal, you're asking me to speak on vortexes, which is a great topic. I don't see a specific question. I say but that's a great topic. Vortexes, what they might be, where they exist. They can also be created. Not only in the lab can scientists create vortexes, but we too can create vortexes just doing very simple things. You can spin, you can turn around, you can walk a maze or a mandala design imprinted on the ground at a certain pace, at a certain rotation, and create and open vortexes. Vortexes mimic black holes to some degree. However, vortexes aren't black holes. Black holes are a very unique power in creation, and often, as it is above, so shall it be below, often mimic and show up in black obsidian, particularly rainbow obsidian and the black obsidian that is spherical and polished, that produces that bullseye pattern on the ball. You probably can't see it. I don't have all my extra lights on. It does require light to pass through black obsidian, in order to see its colors and inclusions clearly. And if you never heard that before, that's important. So if you're buying black obsidian in a gift shop, in a crystal shop, and it's not adequate lighting, you don't know exactly what you're getting. Black obsidian is not just black. Black obsidian should have gold sheen sometimes, silver sheen sometimes, watermelon obsidian. So it might have pink and green and purple and bluish hues in a circular bullseye pattern within it, even smaller pieces of black obsidian. So it's helpful to carry it out into the sun, into the bright light to get a better look at what's going on inside black obsidian. But, and I know I'm jumping around on many different topics, but because I'm going back to the stone rings. So you want to understand the cycles. You might want to understand the astrology, what's going on, where the moon is, where the planets are in relation to your particular astrological chart. You might want to look at what type of work you're doing. Are you grounding? Are you cleansing, purging something? Are you studying something? Are you trying to project something, create something? All of those things relevant to what element and what dimensional space you're operating in. And for me, that determines what finger I'm going to wear stone jewelry on, precious minerals, but even gold, silver, copper, and other metals. Even in terms of pointing and projecting and how you move your hands in a ritual is specific to what powers you're operating in. And in a culture that we see that clearly illustrated in, I believe, would be Hinduism and Buddhism. And so we understand that there's certain very specific hand gestures that mean certain things and that cause certain powers to come down for protection, for usage in magic, for usage in prosperity, for usage in healing and health, and all sorts of very human, but also very spiritual endeavors. Crystal can be used to purify and cleanse drinking water to some degree. Now, as a Hurricane Katrina survivor, as a former enlistee in the military, um, and with some knowledge of biological contamination, you can't just rely on just the quartz. Let's say you're in a desperate situation. Let's say a storm has come through and there's no power, and so you have to, purify water to drink. You might add, a drop or two of bleach uh, for every, I think it is 3 or 4 gallons of water, something like that. But just the quartz alone and by itself, no. And in fact, there is a stone uh, that has a history of purifying water. And somebody, um, Queen Bonita or Kay, somebody Google for me right now, because I forgot the name of this this stone. Somebody Google for me right now, a mineral or stone that purifies water, and help me remember what the name of this stone is, because that's what this is. And this is a stone that has been used historically. There are, indigenous cultures, even some old world, um, European cultures that have a history, a documented history of putting this particular stone in water to purify it. And if you can't find it, I might have to go and find it. Yeah, that's it. Sarah, thank you. I love my I love my chat because y'all be on it. Sarah Nasut, thank you so much for your help. It is shungite, shungite, and so this shungite, chunks of it, pieces of it, would be put in a container with the water, and it indeed will cleanse and purify your water to a greater degree than just putting quartz crystal in it. When we think of quartz crystal, we're talking about energy, vibration, molecules, molecular structure. Whereas this shungite is doing something a little bit more chemically reactive, and it's able to absorb that water and release that water and remove those heavy metals and contaminants from the water. So Sarah Nasut, I honor the God and Goddess in you. Thank you so much for your help. That's what I was looking. That's what I was looking for. Yes, honey, Queen Bonita, Fauna Laveau, a great deal of shungite does come from Russia, indeed. And it's not a very easy stone to find. A lot of rock shops, crystal sources don't even carry it. I use it to cleanse and purify my stones. So I have various crystal balls, if you haven't noticed already, in almost every mineral that I work with. And so part of my cleansing process is through the shungite. And so I use them to purify my stones, especially when I do healing work, physical contact with my stones, with other people. My crystal, my spheres specifically, I use them on the shungite. Crystal Corner, I appreciate you. Honey Queen, Bonita, Fana Laveau. I'm truly honored and grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you so much for your offerings and your donations. I would like to also remind you that I am very appreciative of you utilizing PayPal to send your offerings and your donations, also your offerings and donations as it relates to your readings, initiations, and your work. It's just a lot easier for me. It's a system that I understand a little bit better, and it's just a little bit more fluid. I'm no longer, requiring or demanding that people not use the YouTube button. You may absolutely use the YouTube button if you so wish, but I prefer the paypal.me/the Divine Prince, particularly for readings, consultations, ritual work, much bigger things. And of course, you can also find that at www.houseofthedivineprince.com. And I changed some of my website around too, by the way, in the last 24 hours. So I would absolutely appreciate your comments, your criticisms, your advice about some of the things that I've done on my website. I'm trying to create a space where I can actually put a YouTube box in my website so people can enjoy the show directly from my website. But I'm digressing, and I'll work on that in my own time. Please do type your questions in capital letters. I appreciate you, Sarah Nisut. Yes, elite shungite is best for elixirs and absolutely for things that you're going to internalize and take into your body. Crystal Corner is also asking, can I speak on maroons? They have been coming up for you lately. That's a great question. I think maroonage, the whole idea of maroons is underestimated, understudied, under discussed, particularly in the context of Africans born in the United States, Africans enslaved in the United States. Often when we think of maroons, Nanny of the Maroons is the first image that comes to mind. We idolize her. We've deified Nanny. We think of maroonage somehow as being a Brazilian thing. Back in the Yahoo 360 days, there was a real popular movie that I can't recall the name of right now about slavery in Brazil, and how the slaves were treated in Brazil, and about a slave result that ultimately rose up in Brazil. Some of you might remember it was so popular that it went all through Yahoo 360 and many of the communities that were popular at that time, and someone attached a virus to it. It was a very long movie. It was like a 3-hour movie. So it took a long time, you know, with the technology of the 90s, in the early 2000s. It took a very long time, you know, to download it. And at some point, someone attached a virus to it, and it destroyed a lot of people's computer. But it was a slave-oriented, slave-based movie based in Brazil. Quilombo, Dark Girl Tantra. Thank you. I have the most educated chat in YouTube. You better believe it. Okay. That's it. Quilombo. That's the movie. And so we identify maroonage, we identify escaping slavery, separate from the, you know, the Underground Railroad. We identify with the freedom, the desire for freedom to be something that is south of the border. We somehow have been allowed white supremacy, colonialism, Christianity, Catholicism, politics to really convince us that somehow the slaves who did exist in the US were somehow the weakest, the most ignorant, the most far removed from their culture, the most far removed from their root. And so as we deify Egypt, as we deify Ethiopia, as we deify things that are ethnic and rooted in the motherland and rooted in other lands removed from us, so too have we done so with maroonage and maroon culture. And so the idea of maroons and maroon culture north of Mexico is understudied, under talked about. For instance, right here in Louisiana, there were over 250 maroon camps surrounding the region of New Orleans. And if you understand the geography of New Orleans, it was much smaller back then. The French Quarter, many of you know the French Quarter, was New Orleans proper. That was the city of New Orleans. So if you understand crossing Rampart Street into Armstrong Park, that was wilderness. That was unincorporated area. That was swamp. In fact, Basin Street is named so because there's water beneath there. There's a channel that runs there. So there were at least 250 maroon camps in this area. Saint Milo, San Milo in Spanish, Saint Milo in English. You know, you have a French spelling, you have a Spanish spelling, you have an English spelling. So just Google Saint Milo, M-A-L-O. He's one of the most renowned maroon leaders here in New Orleans area, who, as the story is recorded, not only escaped and then set up a camp, an encampment in what is now New Orleans East, which was the wilderness back then, but did so for periods of 5, 7, 8, 10 years at a time, and would come back into town and gather food, gather resources, ferry information, communications back and forth. Other slaves would sometimes be given passes, holiday passes, weekend passes, and sometimes they would disappear and not return, or disappear and come back late. And indeed, there would be harsh punishment in many cases for doing so. You could be whipped, you could be flogged, you could be tortured. But indeed, the fear that we were able to do that, could do that, would have been something that the slave master would not have wanted to talk about, would not have wanted to publicize, would not have wanted to journal in a book and put that in a newspaper, because it would have fueled the fear, the already persistent and prevalent fear of revolution. The Haitian Revolution was phenomenal in that it not only brought freedom to that nation, but it helped to create and increase a fear that already existed here in the Deep South, in the antebellum South, about radical slaves, uppity slaves, high-minded slaves who just had the gall to even think that they could claim freedom for themselves. So Nat Turner is not an apparition. He is not unique in that way. His story has been deified. We have made his story unique. Authors have written specifically about Nat Turner and that rebellion and that story. But understand there were hundreds of rebellions, many encampments where slaves would escape. So maroon culture helped to preserve voodoo, helped to preserve obia, helped to preserve Bokor practice, helped to preserve our knowledge of herbology, of plants, of minerals, and how to utilize them first in healing. But now, going back to maroonage, but now you're talking about fighting enslavement. Now you're talking about rebelling against oppression. Now you're talking about rebelling against Jim Crow and white supremacy and people being lynched. So ATR, whether you call it voodoo, whether you call it Ifa, whether you call it Santeria, whether you call it Palo, whether you call it Candable, had to evolve. And it had to evolve a level of darkness. We were fighting darkness. It had to develop a level of evil. We were fighting evil. Now, once the need for that was removed, the idea now that we control and dominate and use it on people and on one another for ego-based things is out of balance. It's out of order. But the idea that Nanny might have poisoned Massa for the sake of her children or her freedom or her safety, then we have to look at maroon culture. We have to look at maroon culture not only for also feeding and fueling Bois Cayman and the desire for freedom, but also setting an example in a time where there was no technology, no radio, no TV, very few slaves who could publicly admit to even knowing how to read or gaining access to materials to read. So keeping freedom under wraps was a job. Keeping the idea of maroonage under wraps was a job that then subsequently shows up in the archaeology. So we can now today go and search that. And if indeed you know the words to use, you can find the archives. But as a rule, no, we don't talk about that in Black History Month. That's not taught in school. Many of these, conscious movements don't discuss or have a full understanding of maroonage, maroon culture, and it's not only its ability to keep the idea and the reality of freedom alive for us, but also, again, Crystal Corner, in the maintenance of our practice, of our traditions, of our food, of the aromas and the smells that we were used to and could remember and could then recapture in the new world. We had to learn new vegetation. We had to learn new plants. And so when you look at maroon camps, Jamaica, Honduras, and the mountainous regions, we don't have mountainous regions in the Deep South. So there was room, there was land for people to escape and never come back. And often they were thought dead, or at least were said to be dead, to discourage other slaves from doing the same thing. So if you were able to escape and join a maroon camp and never return, you absolutely were going to be said to have, been killed or dead, and the other frightened slaves would believe that you were killed or dead. And so it was a powerful tool in maintaining control. But once that idea, that reality of maroons became real, then the idea of freedom became that much more real. And we see in the Black Code, for instance, to keep us in place, to keep us from gathering, to keep us from doing things, to recreate that sort of environment. So part of the fear of voodoo, of root work, of conjure, was indeed rooted in that. And let's be clear, you can also research slave medicine. And you will find documented evidence, documented wording that Master was sorely fearful of root work, conjure, herbology, because slaves didn't have access to doctors and medical care. They were treated like the cattle was treated. So Massa gained a certain level of respect for the root worker, the conjure, the herbologist, because they could heal. And sometimes so much respect, so much power in the roots that they healed Massa's family. So if the wife got sick, the kids got sick, had a yeast infection or had a cold or had dental issues, and a slave had that level of skill, absolutely it was going to be utilized. But it was sorely feared. It was greatly feared. So that fear was also placed upon the idea, the spirit of voodoo, conjure, root work, and it began to take dominance. And if you can just imagine the volatile environment, slave or slave owner, and existing in that volatile environment, then you can imagine poisoning and maiming and harming of people, in the development of those practices and those skills became compartmentalized. And so that's how we begin to start separating from the mother tree, the mother root, and now developing these labels as a way of compartmentalizing certain regions. When we think of Obia, we think of particular regions, particularly Jamaica and the Caribbean. But if you understand how the Middle Passage works, many of you, if you've already taken your ancestry.com, many of you already know you have blood in South America. You have blood in Central America. You got blood in Honduras and Guatemala and Mexico and some of those regions. So the idea that, you sort of were brought to one place and left there is also a misnomer, a lack of real understanding about the dynamics of enslavement. So Obia absolutely moved around and moved north in some cases into North America, as did many other practices, teachings, and skills. There were enslaved people and practitioners transported from the Caribbean um, long before the Haitian Revolution, but indeed afterwards as well. And so the idea brought voodoo to America, it's just not true. It helped to bring the fear of Haiti out again. It helped to revive the fear of voodoo out again, is what I meant to say. It helped to cause them to put greater pressure on us to not acknowledge these traditions. And it also made us again realize that there was power in our traditions that maybe we had overlooked. Just like today, there's power in our traditions that maybe we might be overlooking to defeat many of the common issues that we deal with every day, including politics, including issues with the police, including issues with health and disease and drug addiction and mental health. There's absolutely power in these traditions that we can utilize today, that has been kept secret, that has been kept hidden, that has been kept locked away, that has been bastardized, that has been said to not exist, that has been demonized. We live in a space, we exist in a space unique to any other time period in this hemisphere, to take what level of knowledge and skill and technology we have and move what is unique to us, what lies in the blood. Voodoo is a blood religion. And so we have an opportunity to revive our ancestors' desires, needs, wants, goals through us, in us today in a very, very powerful and unique way. Forgive me for being long-winded. I don't want to miss anybody's questions. Crystal Corner, I hope I got that for you. If not, hit me with a follow-up and I'll respond to it again. Honey Queen Bonita. Am I looking at a question or a comment? Uh, okay, yeah, you're throwing me off. I'm not exactly sure what that is, or what you all are talking about. What crystals would I recommend for scrying? Um, Trill for this facts. What crystals would I recommend for scrying? Absolutely. Um, First, you want to think clarity. First, you want to think clarity. And in terms of clarity, you're probably going to get the best clarity out of quartz crystal and the quartz crystal family first. Whether it be polished, this is a hand stone, a palm stone of quartz. This is a single terminator of clear quartz. And of course, you can always use crystal balls. The idea is you want clarity and you want surface. And I might be revealing a secret to some of you right now, but you can also scry in water. You can also scry in mirrors. You can also scry with candle flames. So the idea of scrying first comes from within. The activated third eye, the ability, like meditation, to still the mind, to not react normally to the things you normally react to, like a mosquito or fly in the room. Your normal, even your involuntary response normally is to respond to that. When you're in a state of meditation or scrying, which is very similar to a state of meditation, you want to maintain your focus. And usually on a particular spot or location within the tool that you're using to scry. And then allow your mind to be free. And so the imagery that you see when you scry, it's not in the stone itself. It's in your third eye. It's in your third eye. The idea that you can, produce imagery in a crystal, it's Hollywood. It's cartoons. It's fantasy. We use the crystal ball as a tool of opening up the third eye. Scrying can also be accomplished with black obsidian mirrors, slabs of black obsidian. A well-known scryer, if you will, and person who was said to predict the future was Nostradamus. And Nostradamus did so by scrying into slabs or mirrors of black obsidian. The shungite that I held up, if it were bigger and didn't have the concave surface in it, it too could be utilized for scrying. So you did ask about crystals. So quartz, topaz, like golden topaz, smoky quartz. You want to stick with clear stones. Citron could be very useful for scrying. Also, when you want to choose, you also might want to choose stones, trill for this facts, that resonate with everything from your fifth chakra above, and particularly those that open the third eye. Now, a stone that's not clear, but is a third eye stone, is tiger eye. Tiger eye is a very common stone. You see it in a lot of jewelry, even, high school graduation jewelry. Tiger eyes, oh, this is black obsidian. Okay, here's the tiger eye. Tiger eye is said to be a third eye stone. So scrying with a large enough piece of tiger eye could also be beneficial. The gold in the tiger eye helps bring in the sun rays, the seven chakra rays, wisdom, knowledge, math, science. The brown in the tiger eye helps to ground that gold, that white light into the earth or into your physical earth plane chakras. So it takes that gold energy from the top of your head and roots it all the way down to the first chakra when you scry with tiger eye. So scrying with rose quartz, for instance, rose quartz is going to vibrate in love, nurture, mother's love, healing things, repairing things, that type of love. Rose quartz is never about sexual love. Rose quartz is about nurturing love, mother's love, agape love, that sort of love. So meditating into quartz as well as scrying into quartz would be useful for very specific goals, very specific things. So if you're talking about scrying for predictive things, telepathic things, psychic things, channeling messages from higher beings, channeling forces and powers, I would suggest crystal, clear crystal. Scrying with black obsidian, for instance, which I've said to be a truth stone, would be to draw forth truths out of a thing, bring truths to the surface of a thing. So, you know, what you're scrying for, just like with what finger to wear, is as specific to how many minerals there are available to do that tool. It's just knowing how to match the tool to what you're scrying for, what it is that you're looking to conjure up. Spiritual cleanse can be done in many ways. Spiritual cleanses can be done just like the elements, through earth, through water, through fire, through air, and each of those elements, and through mind and spirit. And each of those elements then relate to specific tools. So when we think of air, we're going to think of rosemary. We're going to think of sage. We're going to think of mint. We're going to think of smudging. We're going to think of burning incense. We're going to think of aromatherapy. If we think of fire, then we think of candles. We think of cauldron pots. We think of burning away illusions. We think of writing down, you know, our wants, needs, and desires, and things that we no longer desire, and setting them aflame. So there's a basic idea of spiritual cleanse, and then there's a spiritual cleanse that comes with having a basic divination done, getting a clearer understanding about what you might be battling, what person, place, thing, energy, force, power, inner block, and then seeking to cleanse that with a specific prescription, with a specific recipe. Quilombo came out in 1984. Gilberto Gil did the soundtrack. Thank you, Dark Girl Tetra. And it might very well still be available somewhere now without a virus attached to it. So if you have not seen it, it's a really, really powerful movie. It'll make you angry. It'll make you emotional. It'll really, if you're an empath, it'll really take you in to that time and place. There are very few things that still stand in the virtual world or in the real literal world that can really take us back to enslavement in that time period. And I believe they did a really good job with Quilombo specifically. Now, in terms of a location, New Orleans. The first time I walked through the French Quarter, I went back in time. The people that I was with, the group that I was in, had to hold me up, literally, because I was trancing and I was going back to time. And I could hear horse-drawn carriages. I could hear people speaking in other languages and other dialects, and from a previous time that I knew was not modern New Orleans. This was the very first time that I visited here. And I had never experienced anything like that anywhere else before. Now, I had been to George Washington's manor in Washington, D.C. I can't think of what it's called right now. I've been to Douglass, Frederick Douglass's house in Anacostia, Maryland, right across the river in Washington, D.C. So we're talking about structures built, you know, in the 1800s. And they inhabit those spirits and those energies. The slave quarters, I've been into slave quarters. We still have standing slave quarters here in New Orleans. Some of them are in the French Quarter and now house bars and gift shops and even apartments. And so there are locations that absolutely capture you as this movie does and take you back. The more spiritual you are, the more sensitive you are to this, and it will take you back to that time, that place, and give you that feeling, that experience of enslaved, your ancestors, and what they experienced. And I believe we are to have those experiences to bring balance and correction into the present, into this present moment in time space. Lest we forget, lest we forget the Gullah Geechee, lest we forget the many Maroons. Thank you for that, honey, Queen Bonita. Gullah Geechee was another historic grouping of people, because the Gullah Geechee represent specific ethnic groups from West Africa, primarily from Ivory Coast, Angola, in that region, who were brought to the Carolinas, Georgia coast, and escaped. And many of you don't realize there are sea islands all up and down the coast of the East Coast, by the way. But in the Carolinas, some large-sized sea islands that allowed these enslaved Africans to escape into, again, the wilderness, much like the enslaved Africans did here in New Orleans. The bayou was considered the wilderness. And so these sea islands were considered the wilderness, and they were feared. Even so, by the white man, they felt that they were inhabitable, that we would starve, that we would be ate up by wild animals, that we would somehow be killed and maimed by the Native Americans. And so everybody universally feared these sort of wild, unincorporated areas. And the Gullah Geechee incorporated the sea islands off the Carolina and Georgia coast. The sea islands, if I'm not mistaken, sort of run from Maryland, the state of Maryland, almost to Florida. But we know and have sort of documented the most about the Carolinas and Georgia and the Gullah Geechee people in the Gullah Geechee Nation. Another strong representation of maroonage and our ability, our willingness to fight enslavement and to hold on not only to our freedom, but our culture. So craft making and metallurgy and silver work and jewelry work and the making of implements and the making of foods that were specific to us and cultural nuances in our clothes and our attire and our dress, all things that were able to survive slavery, survive into maroon culture and other forms of maroon culture that are not talked about and not studied about enough, not even in this so-called Black History Month. I still don't quite understand Black History Month, for indeed, you know, we talk about Black history every day. We talk about voodoo every day. We talk about culture every day. We talk about indigenous ways of being every single day. So I don't quite understand Black History Month, other than I believe it has now become sort of a capsule of approved and safe Black history. And so we talk about Rosa Parks and Dr. King and Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey and powerful leaders, but the same leaders, safe leaders, leaders that the common masses unilaterally embrace in some way. But then there's so many others that go unrecognized, that go untalked about, that go unspoken of. So in the spirit of Black History Month, I'm going to invoke the ancestors of Hoodoo. I'm going to invoke the ancestors of Voodoo, not only in New Orleans, but in the South, in the antebellum South, and the America that we knew of that time. I'm going to invoke Leafy Anderson, born in 1887, died in 1927, born in Wisconsin in the 19th century. She was the founder of the Spiritualist Church movement, the Black Spiritualist Church movement in New Orleans in the 1920s. The church she founded in New Orleans featured traditional spirit guides in worship services. One of those prominent spirit guides was Black Hawk, the spirit that I mass Indian in, the spirit that we worship here in House of DivinePrince, with a mixture of Protestant and Catholic Christian iconology, like the Madonna, like the Mother and Child, as well as prophesying and laying on of hands, foot washing, and other such activities. Her mediumship included contact with the spirit of the Native American warrior chief Black Hawk, who had lived in Illinois and her home state of Wisconsin. Her successor, Mama Catherine, Mother Catherine Seals, led the church, the Temple of the Innocent Blood, until it dissolved, resulting in multiple spiritual denominations in New Orleans and elsewhere in the South and in America, including the state of Maryland, where I was raised. These denominations, along with a number of similar but independent spiritualist churches across America, are known today as spiritualist churches or the Black Spiritualist Church movement. Some of the spiritualist guides found in spiritualist churches, such as Black Hawk, Father John, Mary Magdalene, may be found on the altars of root workers and conjurers all across the South as well as other parts of the country. Another spirit and ancestor I would like to invoke, Pierre Antoine, was born in 1748, died in 1829. A Spanish priest in New Orleans, a Capuchin friar, Fray Antonio de Saldeye, who played a major role in New Orleans voodoo. Through many years of service at St. Louis Cathedral under Spanish, then briefly French rule, then U.S. rule, he won great love and respect from his French congregation, who had previously regarded his harshness with distaste. The majority of his people who attended Mass at the time were free women of color, including Marie Laveau. He became quite familiar with Voodoo through his close relationship with her and their mutual charitable work with African communities during the yellow fever epidemic. According to the New Orleans Historic Voodoo Museum, Antoine baptized Marie Laveau on September 16, 1801, and in 1819 he performed her marriage and subsequently baptized her children. His history of ecumencio liberation, which is sort of liberating people from sort of the dogma of the Catholic Church and its teachings, and creating a space of more inclusiveness and more diversity, as we would say today, gave rise to the theory that he and Marie Laveau began the acknowledged integration of Voodoo and Catholicism in New Orleans. He was almost certainly constantly at war with the authorities. The Spanish colonial rulers once sent him back as a prisoner to Spain, and the U.S. officials were very upset upon learning about his secret dealings with the Spanish. The legend that he was empowered to introduce the Inquisition to Louisiana, but refrained from doing so, is apparently based on fact. Black Herman is another ancestor, another hoodoo legendary ancestor I want to invoke today. Born in 1892, died in 1934. Another name for Benjamin Herman Rucker is Black Herman. A magician, an illusionist born in Amherst, Virginia. Black Herman was the most prominent African American magician of his time, well known for his street and close-up magic. He learned the art of stage illusions from from a performer named Prince Herman, who was first his teacher and later his partner. Their show became a combination of medicine show and stage show as they sold patent medicine and performed sleight of hand. In 1909, Prince Herman died, and Rucker, then only 17 years old, took the name Black Herman in honor of his friend. Black Herman subsequently dropped the medicine show aspect of his performance and focused on the stage act. And if you remember, back in that time, a word that we hear is snake oil. And snake oil comes from this time, during Black Herman's time, where there were traveling salesmen. Again, Black people did not have access to doctors, medical facilities, and so there were traveling vendors who carried medicine, herbs, roots, healing salves from town to town. And this is the culture from which we get the word snake oil salesman from. And so, as I just suggested, they utilize sleight of hand, close up magic, much like we would use branding, commercial advertisement today to sell their herbal remedies and their hoodoo concoctions. And so, as with all things Black, as with all things voodoo, as with all things, not ordained by the government, then it became demonized. Then it became something that becomes denigrated. When traveling in the South, Black Herman's audiences were largely and mostly Black. When traveling in the North, his audiences were racially mixed due to the Jim Crow policies in effect at that time. His forte included the Asura levitation, the production of rabbits, and escape from knots tied by audience members. His most famous trick, however, was his private graveyard, where he would sell tickets 3 days before his performance and invite people to watch his lifeless body be placed in a coffin and buried near the venue of his next show. On the day of his show, the audience would witness the coffin being exhumed and dug up from the ground and watch the magician emerge from the coffin alive. We know about Harry Houdini, but how many of you know about Black Herman and his coffin graveyard performance? I want to invoke the ancestor and the spirit of George Washington Cable, born in 1844, died in 1925, an Anglo-American, New Orleans native, and very popular in the 19th century as a storyteller, worked as a reporter for the New Orleans Picayune, toured with Mark Twain, and wrote Old Creole Days, wrote The Dance in Place Congo in Century Magazine in 1886, contributing the popular notion about voodoo and New Orleans. I also want to invoke the spirit of Charles W. Chestnut, an American author, essayist, political activist, and lawyer, best known for his novels and short stories exploring complex issues of racial and social identity in the post-Civil War South. Chestnut was born in Cleveland, Ohio, to Andrew Chestnut and Anne Maria Nee Sampson. Chestnut, both free persons of color from Fayette, North Carolina. At the time of his birth, Chestnut was considered legally white. At the time of my great grandfather's birth, he too was considered legally white. But with the adoption of the one drop rule in the South in the 1920s, he was identified as Black because, as known African descendant with any amount of blood, you had to be identified as Black. It also created what we know as the Tinam, where Black women, particularly fair-skinned Black women with long, pretty hair, were required to wrap their head in order to separate themselves, identify them from white people. And even though Chestnut looks white, he could easily pass for white. he chose not to deny his African heritage. One of Chestnut's most important works was The Conjure Woman in 1899, a collection of stories set in postbellum North Carolina, in which a free slave named Uncle Julius entertains a white couple from the North with extraordinary stories of antebellum plantation life. Another popular figure, a well-known figure, and someone that I had the pleasure of meeting is Chicken Man. Born in 1937, died in 1998. Born in Haiti and brought to New Orleans when he was an infant, Frank Staten called himself Prince Kiyamaya, Prince Kiyamaya. Forgive me for mispronouncing your name. He grew up with his grandfather, a Baptist minister who passed on a love for the Holy Bible and Jesus. The prince was acknowledged far and wide as one true king of New Orleans voodoo, who both locals knew as Chicken Man and many around the world came to know as a Chicken Man. According to Alain Pustanio, during the turbulent years of the early 1970s, Prince Kiamani returned to New Orleans and settled there. He observed the chaos all around him and immediately knew the cause. So many around him were in trouble with drugs. He realized he had found his calling and began to use all of his powers to help those desperate individuals. Prince Kiyamani determined that the best way to gain their trust and attract their attention was to create a sensation of himself. And this was when he created the Chicken Man. Chicken Man was a performance. After gaining fame with his admittedly strange nightclub act, Prince was able to open a venue of his own called Chicken Man's House of Voodoo. The shop was located in the 700 block of Bourbon Street, where it immediately became a landmark among the local voodoo community. When Prince Kiyamani married his wife, Bobby Kiyamani, known as the Chicken Woman, would manage the shop, leaving the Chicken Man free to seek out and help those who needed him among the French Quarter crowds. He soon became a familiar figure around the French Quarter, selling his gree bags and incense, doing readings for next to nothing for some and for free for others. If the person he chose to read had no cash on them, to Prince, this was his ministry and the streets were full of his congregation. In those days, you had to be blind to miss him. Broad smile, dreaded hair, feathers and ribbons and braids hanging down, and sometimes wearing his signature straw hat and always carrying a powerful staff. His act, the Chicken Man act, was responsible for his nickname, and it consisted of him placing a chicken in a trance and biting off the head of the chicken and drinking the blood during a performance from the neck of the chicken through a straw. Then he patted or parted the breast and ate the raw chicken. Known to everyone, the Chicken Man called his act a religious ritual, an act he had performed since childhood. The Chicken Man died in December 1998, and since his death, it is said his spirit can be seen around the streets of New Orleans, where he devoted so much of his time and service to the community. And I indeed, in many ways, walk in the path and the footprint of Chicken Man, literally and figuratively. I've worked with many of the same people Chicken Man worked with. I built a formal relationship with Princess Miriam on Rampart Street. Right around the same time, Chicken Man passed away. So indeed, I feel anointed by his presence and by his legacy. I like to clarify that he was a performer. Chicken Man's gift wasn't voodoo. His gift was performance. And he used his performance to attract and draw attention so that he could help those who were less fortunate, who were in need, who did desire help. And I too seek out and assist those who desire help. I too offer and give free service. I too do meet people at their need, but I also meet people where they meet me. And I respond to you as you respond to me. And when you reach out to me, I read your words carefully. I read your energy carefully. I pay very close attention to what is said, what is asked for, what is represented. And I too have to choose where to share and give my gift, as does anyone. Even the Bible says, feed not your gift, your pearls to swine. So I don't just give away the gift just because people desire it. In fact, I've noticed that, the more free readings and in fact, I got one client that I'm dealing with right now. I've given free time to, and so far we can't connect. It's been 3 days and we can't keep the timing, we can't keep the schedule. Something happens, something comes up, and we're talking about a free appointment. And so I've learned over the years that people don't respect free. People don't honor and acknowledge free. If I give people a free reading, they take the information with a grain of salt, much like you would the free reading you get from your girlfriend, much like the free reading and advice you get from your coworker. You don't respect that. And so when you pay and go to see a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a therapist, a consultant, even a financial consultant, you paying for expertise. You're paying for professionalism. You're paying for a desired and should be documented, provable, repeatable result. That's why we pay consultants. That's why we offer resources to skilled individuals. If people are seeking free advice is everywhere. Post your question to Facebook. You're going to get free advice. But are you going to value it? How much value do you put in that advice? People don't value free Imani Sankofa. They don't honor acknowledge free. Buy a bottle of shampoo from the 99-cent store and then buy, some high brand, pick one of them high name stores, Macy's or something. Buy high brand from that store and tell me which bottle you're gonna let your children play with when they say, "Mommy, we want to watch the baby doll hair." You're gonna give her that 99-cent bottle of shampoo. You know what I'm saying? You're not gonna give her your expensive stuff. So we got to be real. There is a game that is played among clients. It's not politically correct to say so, but I've never been politically correct. But there is a game that's played also among clients. Clients also know how to cry poor mouth. Clients also know how to, stroke you for sympathy. Indeed, there are vampires that exist among the addicted community to readings. I'm not talking about people who seek divination for answers. I'm talking about my friends that are addicted to readings. And you got a reader over here and a reader over there, and you got 5 different readers and 5 different systems, and they're giving you all sorts of information. Some pastors say the same thing about going to more than one church. My mama used to believe you can't study more than one religion. And your energy is like all over the place. It's just all over the place. And so you've got to ground somewhere. You've got to settle in somewhere. I offer you to settle in with yourself. I offer you to ground in yourself. That's why I make a big deal about ethnicity and DNA. I don't care your race. I don't care your geology, your geography. I don't care where you are located. You got to break it down. If you're going to look at the indigenous culture, the indigenous bloodline, those who give us these powerful spiritual gifts and practices that many of us are seeking from today, then we got to look at its presence at the DNA level, at the level of Jacob's ladder. Please, y'all, don't let me talk. You know, I'll get in my feelings and my emotions and I'll talk. And y'all, some of y'all want to see me clown and act a fool, and I'm not trying to do that. I'd much rather answer your questions, comments, and requests. I'd much rather respond uh, directly to that which you need to know and clarify uh, today and right now in this divine moment in time space, and I'll be more than happy to do that for you. I get lost and I get in my feelings and I start talking and I get on a tangent, and I don't want to do that. Thank you so much, Katavia, beginner tarot reader. I certainly appreciate you, and I honor you for acknowledging and speaking your truth. For, you call yourself a beginner tarot reader. I acknowledge that. I respect that in you. Um, be true. Be true to yourself. Be true to your process. Be true to your growth. And therefore you can be open to receive that which you desire. A great deal of the initiations and training that I received over the year, I got for free because I befriended and I built relationships. And I came into people's houses and I mopped floors and I washed dishes and I helped clean up and I helped organize and I helped set up before the event and I helped break down after the event. I made myself active in the system that I wanted to be a part of. And so there are ways absolutely to gain access to everything that we want and need and desire. And it's always not about money. It's always not about resources. But indeed, I can't go to Walgreens and ask for my insulin or my diabetic supplies because I got a pretty face and a smile. I can't go and cry. I can't go and say, I'm struggling right now. Can you help me? You know, they're going to laugh at me. They're going to look at me like I'm crazy. Now, there are places to get help. So you go and you fill out that application. You go to that agency and stand in that line. You go and jump through that hoop for them food stamps or you know, that WIC, you know, or that Medicaid or that Medicare. But somehow, when it comes to our soul, our heart, our minds, cleaning up our heritage and our lineage, that which we're going to pass down to our children in the next generation. We want 1999 and we wanted 7-Eleven and we wanted Burger King fast food, have it your way, you know, and it just doesn't make any sense. And when it falls apart, because it always does, then we complain about it. And each and every one of us in this group can tell a story about what ain't right in these traditions, what ain't right in the initiation, what ain't right about how to access these people, what went wrong in my last ELA, what didn't happen, you know, when I went to Haiti, what I didn't get when I went to Ghana for a month, and now I'm looking, now I'm searching, now I'm desiring. So open that third eye. You gotta be spiritual. You just can't look at the flesh. Please don't just look at my flesh. Don't just look at my beard. I'm not always gonna have a beard. I'm gonna have on Cover Girl Queen 420 again sometime in the next 30 to 60 days. I am not my hair. I'm not what I look like. I am the voodoo, and the voodoo is in me. And so whether I'm masked as an Indian, whether I'm painted up as Gade, whether I'm being who I am, whether I'm in my sitting around sewing for bodyguard clothes, I'm being true to who I am. I'm being authentic to myself. I'm being authentic to the voodoo. And so as you seek teachers and leaders and godparents, you got to be just as true in how you're viewing and looking at yourself as how you're viewing and looking at these leaders. And we all got dark areas and shadow sides that light needs to be shined on. One of the purposes of courts is also is to infuse light into the darkness. It's to bring light, whether it's into a chakra, into a particular person, place, or thing, but to bring light into a place that needs to be illuminated, that needs to be empowered, that needs revelation, that needs manifestation. So be sure that you're clear, like quartz, in your journey, and that which you seek indeed. When the student is ready, the teacher will come. Indeed, when the initiate is ready, the teacher will be present. But you also have to be ready to ask. A closed mouth doesn't get fed. You also have to be ready to speak your truth. You can't be a mystery. You can't tell me you want to work with me and you're a mystery. You can't tell me I want to work with you and study with you and be initiated under you, and you following me in all my social media, but all of your social media pages are blocked. What are you trying to conceal from me? What aspect of your being are you trying, to hide? And if you didn't catch my very last chat message yesterday, that was real. I'm looking to birth gods and goddesses. I'm looking to make priests and priestess. I'm actively looking for assistants. I'm actively looking for hired assistants. But I'm not just looking for anybody, no more than IBM or Coca-Cola, or the local phone company or the gas company. I'm not just looking for anybody. So come correct, come authentically. There's some great projects on the table right now coming for 2019 in the next 30 to 90 days, most certainly in the next 60 to 90 days, and absolutely in the next 6 months. Some of you are familiar with my New Year's Day post. So I need help. I can't do this by myself. I can't do every performance by myself. I can't do all these rituals by myself. I can't handle the degree of some of the readings that I'm getting by myself. But I need trained people. I need skilled people. I need people with experience. I need people who don't have ghosts in their closet that we're going to have to clean up later on. I need people with a image. I need people who are willing to be honest. I need people who are willing to build a relationship with me and the community in a way that's clean and safe and organic. I need a partner. So I've been told that I'm not asking enough. I've been told that I'm not saying enough out loud about what I need. And I get backed in the corner. I'm backed in the corner right now in terms of sewing. If you local and you want to help me bead and sequence and sew, and you know how to maintain a secret and keep your mouth closed, and you want to earn some money, call me. Okay? I most certainly have openings for readings and consultations, initiations, ancestral work, and divination. I can be reached at my website, www.houseofthedivineprince.com. Also, my direct email is divineprince@houseofthedivineprince.com. I most certainly appreciate your offerings, your donations. I can't say enough about how humbling it is that Voodoo is self-supporting, self-sufficient in 2019. For indeed, without you, I couldn't do this. Without you, I wouldn't be here. Without you, I wouldn't be able to handle all this by myself. So I'm certainly grateful for those of you who utilize my PayPal me, paypal.me/the Divine Prince. That can also be found on my website. Also, if you've ever sent me an email, it's automatically included as a part of my signature in my email. So I'm certainly grateful and humbled and honored by each and every one of you for your support, your love, your offerings, your donations, your showing up in this space, your wisdom and your knowledge, your ability to pull out books and information. All I got to do is talk about the book, you know it. All I got to do is, reference the author and you can find it. I have the most well-studied, well-educated audience in YouTube. I'm sure of it. And so I know that within this group, there are initiates, there are godchildren, there are priests, there are armor bearers, there is security. I need security, paid security. So please contact me, reach out to me. Don't be afraid. Communicate your ideas. Be open and honest about your request. I also require a social life, so be honest and open about that too. And I will most certainly respond to you in a timely manner, timely fashion. Please do type your questions in all capital letters so that I can respond to them. I'm going to close out the show soon, maybe the next five or 10 minutes, depending on how many questions you all decide you want to throw at me now. I'm noticing that I have people who are coming into the show in the last few days, in the last 30 minutes, the last 15 minutes, and then you want to throw a bunch of questions at me. And some of them I do address, some of them are complicated. So I ask that you ask those complicated questions during the body of the show. Give us all an opportunity to be a part of that discussion. I see some talk about a slave market. But again, if it's a comment, I'm not getting all of the comment if it's not all capitalized and I'm not following it. So I'm not sure if you all are in the conversation and I'm just missing something. So let me scroll back up. K. Amina, Mobile, Alabama, African town. My ancestors someday I feel. Okay. All right. Is there a question y'all want me to respond to? Y'all listen, y'all killing me with your comments. And I appreciate your comments, and I'm sure the people in the chat appreciate your comments. But when I'm live on camera, I'm looking for the questions you all want me to respond to answer, and to speak to. And the chat is constantly in motion. Is the chat also constantly in motion for you all while you all are in this space? Thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'm grateful that indeed people take their lunch, they spend their time here at high noon U.S. Central Standard Time with me. Yes, thank you, Honey Queen. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You don't have to put that in the chat though, because it is private. But I appreciate that. Inner block work. Tamika Miller, inner block work. Inner truth work. Is that a question? Is there something specific about that you want me to address? It's most certainly something that needs to be done. Everybody has to, and no matter what path you're on, no matter what system you're initiating into, if it's indeed true, if it's indeed real, if it's indeed authentic, inner block work, inner truth work is automatic. And when I say automatic, it should be automatic in that it should be a part of that instruction. But it's also automatic in that if you are doing yoga, if you are doing initiation into any of the traditions, the paths, absolutely inner work comes with that. One of my godchildren, I was on a phone call with her yesterday, and we talked about that, how just the act of doing any ritual work, any ceremonial work, any ancestral work, thinking that your locked away issues are going to stay hidden is just ridiculous. Absolutely, they, especially your ancestors, are going to bring that which needs to be fixed, repaired, addressed to the surface. So just as a general statement, inner work is absolutely mandatory. Inner block work, especially if you're going from, I'm a child of the universe, I'm spirit being, to I'm now doing readings. I'm now doing work. I'm now doing Reiki. I'm alarmed at the number of people who are doing Reiki and who have access to these inexpensive Reiki courses, which invites them to now go into doing Reiki, which is a manipulation of other people's energy. And these people aren't doing any other work to address their own stuff. So, Reiki practitioners who are alcoholics and got drug addictions and living and existing in abusive relationships themselves, struggling with housing and personal issues themselves, and then they're going into your energy. A Reiki energy, Reiki practitioner is different than a psychic or tarot reader in that a tarot reader is in communication with the dimensional space, with wave and vibration, and it's then using a tool, cards, crystals, shells, palm nuts, runes, water, crystal, to interact with spirit and gather your spirit and then sort of look into it. A Reiki practitioner, you are asking to actively manipulate your energy. And they might not touch you directly like a massage therapist who's not only in your energy, but physically on your skin. But a Reiki practitioner is telling you consciously that I'm manipulating your energy without touching you. But if you can see with your third eye, they're literally going into your body and I'm manipulating, moving your energy around. So I think a Reiki practitioner should be even that much more spiritually prepared than just a fortune teller. They all should be prepared. But when you begin to break down these arts in that way and look at what's really going on, these people have to be better trained, have to be better prepared, have to be more experienced, have to have more time in these systems in which they are seeking to show up in. The term armor as an armor bearer. An armor bearer in Voodoo is usually, if you saw the movie Ghost with Whoopi Goldberg, she had two women there that were armor bearers. So the role of an armor bearer, particularly in any form of voodoo, first and foremost is spiritual security. So they're looking for spirit on me, but also in the participants in the ceremony. And so if spirit then enters the room, there's a protocol for the spirit. Depending on the spirit, the nature of the spirit, what they require, what their needs are, then there's then a protocol. So the armor bearer typically focuses in on the practitioner, the leader of the ceremony. Even in evangelical churches, you will often find an armor bearer. So let's say you go to one of these fire churches, people falling out, speaking in tongues, experience the spirit. Usually it's going to be two armor bearers, usually men standing up to the left and the right of whoever that pastor is. Their job is to watch spirit if they're legitimate. We know it's a lot of trickery going on, but if they're legitimate, their job is to watch spirit. And so when the leader is in spirit, I'm not entirely in control. So I could harm myself. I could harm other people. I could injure myself. Along with the protocols that I mentioned that have to be acknowledged, depending on what spirit particularly is in manifestation. So an armor bearer carries the arms. Spiritually, it carries the armory. They are like the guardians, if you will, the person in whom spirit is coming through, but then also in the crowd, the group, the room, and the moving spirit. They are the attendees. Sometimes that shows up in the church like ushers, but ushers have been sort of watered down over the generations in terms of what they do and what their job truly is. Thank you so much, Kayamina. I certainly do appreciate you so much. I do. Thank you, and I appreciate your help. No, I'm no longer in Maryland. Trill for this facts. I graduated from, well, first of all, I graduated ahead of my class. I ran away from home by force when I was 14, 15 years old. And then I was forced to return due to legalities. I couldn't legally attend school out of state without my parents' permission. So I was forced to then go back home, and I lived in the neighborhood, but with a friend of the family. And so I tested out of Suitland Senior High School in PG County, Maryland. I lived in Coral Hills, Maryland, which is now a part of Incorporated Capitol Heights, Maryland. I lived on the corner of Nova and Glacier Avenue where Bradbury Heights is. In fact, Bradbury Heights was more positioned at the corner of Nova and Glacier until they tore it down and rebuilt it in the last decade or so. I believe 2000, maybe 2 decades ago, 2000, maybe 1999, they rebuilt it. And now it sits more in the middle of the lot, whereas before it sat closer to Nova Avenue. So yeah, that's where I grew up. I tried to come back to DC Trill for the facts. I tried to come back in 2000. It was just too crazy. In fact, I was there when the Muhammad shooting was going on, when Muhammad and his little adopted son were going around Maryland, DC, Virginia, shooting people randomly. I believe that was in 2000, 2001, maybe. Yeah, maybe, yeah, 2000. Maybe, yeah, I think it was in 2000. That was the last time I tried to come back to the Maryland, DC, Virginia area, and it wasn't working. It wasn't working. New Orleans was meant to be my location. And I love Maryland, DC, Virginia. It's also way too expensive. I could not have life there that I have here um, at that cost of living that you all are paying in that DC, Maryland, Virginia area. So no, I no longer live there. I have only one sibling still there in the Maryland area, and I believe she lives in District Heights. But I thank you so much and appreciate your questions, your comments, and your requests. Honey Queen, Bonita, I will be looking for the photos. Absolutely, I appreciate you. Tamika Miller, I hope I addressed um, your questions. Yoel Adams, where do you get the term? Okay, I did answer that. Spiritual protocol. Spiritual protocols, um, you know, I can spend 2 hours just talking about that. Spiritual protocols are specific to the religion, the denomination, the path, the system, and then what's being done. So it's a protocol to how a Catholic ceremony is done. I don't know a lot about Catholicism, but I know there's an order to it. You stand up, you sit down, you know, there's a call and response. You read certain passages from the pulpit. There's a response from the congregation. Well, in Voodoo and Ifa, there's a similarity. When Ifa divination is done in a traditional way, when five Voodoo divination is done in a traditional way, the board is spirit calling the spirit down onto the board, and the board is tapped, and then orikis, proverbs in English, if you will, are spoken while the board is being tapped. And then there are periodic points, just like in a church service, where the crowd says Ashe, 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 based on what's being said. That in itself is a protocol. A greeting might be a protocol. Certain people in certain systems greet a certain way. Many of you who've developed a relationship with me know that I have very specific greetings. If you ever got a message from me that said hi, you know I didn't send it. If you ever got a message from me that said hello, you know I didn't send it. If you ever got a message from me that didn't have divine all blessed and my very distinguished voodoo language in it, then you know I didn't send it. That is a protocol. But protocol also means rules. So my protocol is that I receive questions, comments, and requests by email. I established that protocol because one, is professional. A lot of so-called wannabe overnight psychics, tarot readers are not professionals, nor can they be professional. They're not professional readers, nor can they be professional in terms of how you operate and run a business. So a therapist says, call me. You call a therapist, she don't answer, the receptionist answers. or the secretary answers. And the secretary says, how may I help you? Can I schedule an appointment? If the secretary is out to lunch, you might go to the voicemail, but you don't make a big deal about it. But man, people will text me, Skype me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, 20 times within an hour. And then when I respond, it's not urgent. It's not an emergency. It's not important. So protocols are designed to maintain rules, but also a certain amount of respect and a certain amount of sacredness to the space. I also ask for email requests because my volume is high. I'm not a braggart. I don't operate on my ego. Some of you are here just to see what you can copy and steal and reproduce, but my volume is high. I'm on television. I'm on TV in the US. I'm on TV in the UK. I'm globally known in terms of the internet. People in Africa can access me by way of the internet. So if I didn't have people send emails, I'd be completely confused. Yesterday, I had more than one person calling at the same time, appointments overlapping, so you have to maintain some order if you're serious. Now, reading cards is a hobby for you. It shows. It shows. But if you're reaching out, seeking your client base from people who are not educated, who are not even knowledgeable, get away with that for a little bit. You might get away with that, for some pocket change, but it's not going to be a ministry. It's not going to be a vocation. It's not going to truly be a career. It's not going to truly be your identity. And Voodoo is my identity, 24 hours a day. Kay Amina will tell you. I will answer the phone 24 hours a day for anybody, paid or unpaid, if the approach is right. If the approach is right. And we've forgotten how to communicate. We've forgotten how to build relationships. We've forgotten how to get to know people. We've forgotten how to be vulnerable, because we see and equate vulnerability as being weak. I don't mean that kind of vulnerable. I don't mean letting the predator in your house. I don't mean that. I mean, being vulnerable means sharing some of who you are in exchange for your friend, partner, the person you're introducing, sharing some of who they are. You meet an old lady in the airport and she says, hey, I'm a grandmother, I got grandbabies. Here are the pictures. She's showing vulnerability. She didn't have to expose their images to you. She didn't have to expose her business to you. That's the vulnerability that I mean. So, many of you got your location hidden. You're not even stable enough, strong enough to be able to say, okay, I'm in the state of Washington, out of some kind of fear. Everybody knows where I am. I'm easy to find. I'm easy to locate. I feel pretty safe. I live in a safe neighborhood. My neighbors are not going to take any play. And most certainly, you're not going to play with the voodoo. But I think that we've become super paranoid, particularly in this age of social media and the internet. One, because there is real dangers in the world, but also two, because we often fear what we project. And so people who, it's been said that if you a cheat, then you are much more likely to question, your partner about cheating. If you're a thief, then you're much more likely to be suspicious and suspect, and expect other people to also succumb to thievery. You often expect people to meet life where you meet life. So when we see people find a way to be successful, for instance, to do something unique that's never been done, for instance, to popularize something and take something out of the realm of being demonized into a realm of respect, as I have done for Voodoo, people are amazed by that, shocked by that, but it also gives people a sense of, okay, well, then I can do that. And we expect our leaders and our mentors to do that, to not only rise to position and title and leadership, but also to leave an imprint that, yeah, I can be a successful man or woman too. Uh, my child can rise to fame and fortune and position and presidency and title as well. So it really should be about that. But if we are not being honest about who we are, about what we do, um, about our struggle, I feel somewhat guilt that I haven't really told you all my entire struggle. It's a lot about me you don't know. And as a voodoo practitioner, people expect me to be divine prince, divine all blessed. People expect me to be whole. People expect me to be at peace. People expect me to be joyful. People expect me not to have a problem. People expect me not to have issues. But you can't expect me not to also have a background and a past. And so sometimes I'm guilty of suppressing my story so that I can stay in the position of being a healer. But I've been told that if some of you knew what I've survived, knew the hell that I've been through, you might have greater respect for this voodoo. Indeed, people have died playing around with this voodoo on my watch. People have been blessed involving themselves in this voodoo on my watch. And so I'm going to use this space as I get more and more comfortable. Y'all know I have only been doing this since January 20th, I think. As I get more and more comfortable with doing this broadcast, transferring what I did on Blog Talk Radio to YouTube Live, I'm going to share more of my story. I've invited you to read my mother's books. I've invited you to read my sister Wapani's books. But I too am going to begin to share more and more of my story. So the idea that you can't make it, the idea that you're in a bad situation, the idea that it can't be fixed or repaired is just an illusion. I'm proof of that. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's prison or incarceration. I don't care if it's life or death or ugly diagnosis. I don't care if it's relationships gone bad, careers gone bad, lifestyle and destiny paths gone bad. There's always an option. It's one of the things that drew me to voodoo in the first place. Christianity, Islam, Rastafari all gave me a sense of being de-empowered, all gave me a sense of being lessened to something. Voodoo gave me empowerment, gave me the feeling that I didn't have to be a victim. I didn't have to just go along with what was happening. I didn't have to just wait until the next life for things to be better. I didn't have to wait for heaven, to get my just rewards. We can get and live and experience and receive our just rewards right here and right now in this present moment in time space. And so you might not have the $1,000,000 today, but the $1,000,000 is coming. You might not have the car today, but the car is coming. You might not have the partner you need, the business you need, the degree you need today, but these things are coming. You just got to keep doing the work. Now, the out in voodoo is the doing the work. And so now instead of just waiting on something to happen, worrying about something to happen, complaining about something that's happening, I can now turn to ritual. I can now turn to ceremony, become an active participant in the recreation of my reality. I can become an active participant in what I accept, what I don't accept, what I choose or what I don't choose. Today I choose love. Today I choose financial prosperity. Today I choose security in my housing. Today I choose security in my social network, in my social group. Today I choose friends, real friends that are there when you need them, but also there when the sun is shining. Today I choose love and partnerships and romance and all those things. Though it may not be in your vision right now, it's coming. That which you need and desire is coming. For as a goddess, it is divinely innate and inherent in you. And if we define God as being all things in creation, then there is going to be storm. There's going to be darkness. Shift your consciousness. We think like a human. How does a human handle darkness? How does a God handle darkness? How we think about how a human handles bereavement. How does a goddess handle bereavement? And so if we're elevating and we're saying that we're elevating, then we have to also elevate our responses to life, and also how we project and ask for and receive from life. A closed mouth doesn't get fed. A closed heart doesn't get fed. A mind with a steel gate around it doesn't get fed. And so, indeed, you have to be open. You have to be willing to receive. You have to be willing to try something new, try something different, and be honest about it. Not try something new, try something different blindly with your eyes closed. Try something new, try something different consciously. That's what being awoke is supposed to be about. Being conscious, being able to see even with your eyes closed, being able to see clearly. I see clearly. We've done our 2 hours, y'all. I love you. I appreciate you. But I got to eat. I got to get hydrated. Y'all know how dry my lips get when I talk for 2 hours. And I certainly do appreciate you. I'm looking for your requests, your comments, your request. I'm going to respond to what might be in the chat. You know someone is an empath by many things, Michelle. Um, please, if you will, let me answer that tomorrow. It's going to take me a lot of time to respond to explaining what an empath is and how to respond to that. So, Michelle McQuayla, please let me answer that tomorrow, okay? I appreciate you. I have appointments. I do have a few openings remaining for the day. I'll be checking my email as soon as the show is out. I'll be checking my PayPal as soon as the show is out. And I'll be forward with you on tomorrow at high noon U.S. Central Standard Time for the Power Lunch Revolutionary Hoodoo New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes here on YouTube Live. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Ashe, Asheo, Ashe, Elasti, Ashe, divine, all blessed.